welcome to Trusty Chords, the podcast which aims to celebrate music and those that create it. If you're anything like me, the name Killing Heidi was one that was synonymous with the Australian music scene at the turn of the millennium. Formed in regional Victoria by siblings Ella and Jesse Hooper, Killing Heidi first rose to fame as part of Triple J's Unearthed series, with the track Kettle featuring a newly teenaged Ella on vocals. This promise that Triple J saw soon exploded in 1999, with tracks such as Weir and Mascara serving as an indicator of what was to come on their debut album, Reflector. Reflector was a monster success, becoming the fastest selling album in Australian music history at the time of its release and winning the band 4 ARIA awards, including Best Group and Best Rock Album. A few more albums followed in the years after, but then it all went quiet on the Killing Heidi front. While the Hoopers are still immensely active, Ella can be frequently seen in the media world, it was only close to a decade ago that Killing Heidi themselves became active again. Now, after years of shows, the band are hitting the road this year to mark 25 years of Reflector. They've not only announced a 25th anniversary reissue, but they're hitting stages around the country to play the record in full. Put simply, if you were a Killing Heidi diehard like me, then you won't want to miss this. Recently, I was lucky enough to be joined by Ella and Jesse for a chat, and truly, I can't thank them enough for the pleasure. So before we get into it, I strongly urge you to buy a ticket to Killing Heidi's upcoming gigs, and once you're done doing that, pop Reflector on the stereo, have a listen to our chat, and I'll see you at the end of the episode for some general housekeeping. Ella and Jesse Hooper, thank you very much for joining this episode of the Trusty Chords podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Good morning.
Now, for those who might not recognise your names, could you give me a quick few words on who you are and why we're both chatting today? Or why we're all chatting today?
Sure. Well, I'm Jesse, and this is my sister Ella. We are the songwriting central founding members of Killing Heidi, which started in 1996 and had a little bit of a break, but we're back now celebrating our 25th anniversary of our big album, Reflector.
Yep, I'm Ella. I'm the little sister / singer trying to make this phone not go ding story of my life. Yes, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild to think that we're 25 years into a music career. I have spun that out from all the way back in 1996, 97 into a solo career with 3 or 4 albums out now and a sort of media side hustle, including radio and TV and podcasting, but mainly a singer-songwriter too.
So basically what I'm hearing is you're everywhere, and that is exactly what you were back in 2000, but we're going to get to that in a sec, because that's a terrible segue, really, if I'm going to get to it later. But what I love to do first is actually go back to where a love of music first formed. So for the both of you, do you have a recollection of your earliest memory of when music first resonated with you?
Well, look, one of mine would probably be our parents had some mates who were really great players. So for me, it was when they had a friend called Tim Hancock come over, and he was a very advanced maestro acoustic guitar player, and so he was able to blow me away as a child. And I would watch this guy playing at a level of mastery which I'd never seen that really close. So it was like watching someone within a meter playing at a level that was magical, mystical, mastery. That was one of the moments for me that I was like, whoa, okay, that's special, and I'm curious.
That's such a strong memory for me too. Jam sessions, we were very, 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 very blessed to have 2 parents that were music obsessives, and not shy about it. So in our household, it was kind of like, before getting the meal on the table or putting the telly on, it was much more like, what record are we going to play tonight? What kind of, music was just so central. Listening to it, fanning out over it. And for me, a special connection with my dad was sort of learning all about it. Like I'm a bit of a boffin that way. I'm a music nerd. I like to know what studio it was recorded in, who the songwriters were, and that songwriter's not the singer. That's actually some different guy. That's the guitarist who sings that one, all that good stuff. So a bit of music nerdery came down the line, and I've always had a passion for writing. So lyrics and poetry and literature and writing is where I really get my creative jollies from. So which was kind of some would say a perfect storm between my passion for words and communication and Jesse's passion for beautiful sonics and finger picking guitar and chords and riffs in general. So I think we sort of had a good thing going from day one.
So, were there any particular artists that you guys sort of enjoyed or were sort of listening to in those early days that sort of stand out for you? Because obviously we're mentioning Tim Hancock, but I'm assuming he wasn't exactly, someone you're popping on the Walkman on the bus to school or something.
Well,
True.
true, but like he was, I guess, influenced. I'd say our first heavy influence would have been your folky kind of 60s, 70s era stuff, like massive amounts of Bob Dylan, massive amounts of Van Morrison, Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, and then a lot of sort of 70s rock like Led Zeppelin, Steppenwolf, Cream. What else? Just that sort of fuzzy, beautiful English guitar. I mean, Eric Clapton, kind of like, a lot of great guitar stuff. Jimi Hendrix, shitloads of that incredible, colourful, Janis Joplin. So your stock standard, starter pack of great rock and roll and singer-songwriter. And then as we became into our own as teenagers is when the 90s kind of broke. So we went from that beautiful starter pack diet of folk singer-songwriter, 70s rock and roll into Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, No Doubt, Alanis Morissette, this wonderful era of updated, spiky, grungy rock pop, Skunk and Nancy, it's just was what am I missing there, bro? Just
No, it's good. Yeah, you've pretty much hit all the ones I wrote down. I mean, and the other one was like Silverchair, a band of young people too that were like, okay, cool, inspired so many young musicians to feel like it wasn't out of reach to be in a band.
Because I mean, that's a very good segue there. Because Silverchair became popular through Triple J, and obviously so did you guys. Because you guys ended up with the song "Kettle" on Triple J Unearthed. I've got the CD there. This is not the only prop we've got today, but yeah, I should say this is the most visual audio podcast. This is Triple J's Unearthed 4 CD from 96, 97, I think it is. So the song "Kettle" was obviously on there, and that became quite a bit of a popular one. So that obviously would have been a bit of a springboard for you guys to wider success. But what was that experience like to actually get this sort of airplay? I mean, for you guys who were from a very regional town and everything, what was that like?
Yeah, it was wild. I mean, we weren't just from the regional town. We were literally the 20 minutes up the last house on the dirt road outside of the town. It couldn't be more isolated from where we sort of grew up in terms of a bush upbringing. And Triple J, listening to Triple J, and then having our song embraced. And like Alice sort of referenced a bit earlier, like Triple J played that song well beyond when the next Unearthed people won. They put that song into the mix, but Kettle was a staple for a year. So that was just such an amazing opportunity for us that they just loved it, and they just basically put us on rotation for a year, and that was the catalyst to get all the interest that then defined our career. So that's how we got our first people that heard our songwriting potential, did a development deal with us. It was all down to that Kettle song that really got us that initial interest and opened up all those other doors.
I mean, it is really a brilliant song as well. I can see why there was such, interest. But I mean, you guys also just so young at the time as well. I mean, much like Silverchair, I don't want to make the comparison too often, but very young, showing a lot of promise. And I mean, Elle, I can see you something to say this. I don't want to step on your toes, but by all means, feel free to weigh in.
Please do make the comparison. I kind of remember. I mean, I think Silverchair. Obviously, we know that they really owned the era, but we were indeed so heavily influenced by their example. I remember a moment where I literally pointed at the radio. I think sitting up in that bush block in the hills, completely isolated, as Jesse said, end of the road, couldn't be further from a town or city, and pointing at the radio, going, "See, mum, those guys are our age," and daring her, please, come on, let us, because by then I was unbelievably already very motivated and very hungry. I was like, I want to do it. This is what I want to do. Let me at it. We've got these songs. We're starting to form a little band. We're busking. We're playing for free at high school at lunchtime. We're taking every little tiny community gig that we can. And then Silverchair broke because mum and dad were like, hey, there's plenty of time, as good parents would normally say. There's plenty of time, guys. Settle down. You're literally 13 and 15, or 12 and 14, even when we were busking. And I pointed at the radio. I was like, did you know that they're 15 and they are the biggest band in the country? Anyway, so I literally used them as an example to further convince our parents that we were ready for the big ride, and it worked out.
So after all that sort of initial success, we do have the Reflector album in 2000, but before that, we get a few singles. Like we get the likes of, we've got Weir, we've got what else we got? We got Mascara here. I've got all the singles off the side here because I figured you guys I was going to live without it as well. But um, but in like how did that sort of all come about for you guys? Like what was that recording process like? Because I can only assume that, for young kids like yourselves, the idea of actually recording an album, that must have been a daunting prospect.
Yeah, and it was so drawn out. So basically, Ella and I would write acoustic demos between 1997 and 99, basically, off the back of Kettle, with this enthusiasm and this optimism that it wasn't just a dream. There was our song on the radio, so it kind of motivated us to keep working. We had a development deal with someone who we really welcomed into the collaborative process to take those songs to the next level. Because as Ella referenced, our sonic references, the current ones, were like really produced bands, right? Really heavy, sonically experimental, or very overdubs. They weren't an acoustic duo band, which is what we kind of have been writing as, but we wanted to evolve the sound. So we spent the next 3 years doing high school, catching the train down to Melbourne to work in short bursts in the studio. So our collaborator would come up to Violet Town and help do pre-production, and we'd be spending almost every weekend in Melbourne developing these songs over 2 years. And it was an amazing process.
Neglecting our studies.
Yeah, it was an amazing process because we were really green in the studio. So we were welcoming working with much more experienced collaborators, both from the rhythm section and the producer and the engineer. And we were so excited to hear this thing evolve sonically. But at the same time, it was such a long process that it was like, is this ever going to be finished? Is this ever going to come out? But it was an amazing, apprenticeship into production, being teenagers, but getting to work with amazing adults in the music industry. We still felt like a luxury for us and an amazing learning experience. So we absorbed as much as we could. We had lots of certain ideas on how we wanted things to sound for some things, and for other things, we just welcomed ideas in. So it was a very collaborative couple of years, and it probably is why Reflector sounded so weird and wonderful, is that it was bombastic. It still had moments of intimacy as a songwriting duo and stripped back moments, and it had moments where we just let it all out and it was just crazy overdub strings, backing vocals, high tempo changes, like crazy shit going on. But I feel like that just represents everyone that was involved in that Reflector album. We had some amazing collaborators in there, yeah.
Actually, I'm originally from Adelaide, actually, and eventually moving over to Melbourne, I had no clue where Violet Town actually was. I mean, I knew it was sort of like regional and everything, but in December, actually, my band played out in Beechworth, and on the way, I was just like, you know what, this is a long way out. Like, I saw the sign for Violet Town, and I'm like, oh, that's where Killing Heidi from. Wow, I can see how isolated this must have been for you guys at a young age. Like, I can only assume there wasn't really much of a music scene out there. Like,
Yeah.
it seemed like it was pretty much you guys. And Tim Hancock, of course.
Well, actually, yeah, there was a baby little music scene out there, and there still is. So we were very lucky. Like, shout out our creative community, because it was, yes, it's tiny, it's isolated, but I'd like to think almost everywhere you go in this country, and it's why we're so lucky and so privileged, is like there are little pockets of creative community that make things happen. And even if it is as small as people getting together for a folk night every, one Wednesday a month or whatever, that is what we grew up with and what we relied on for those little learning experiences. And we actually did have a couple of mentors that lived in town, like our early guitar teachers, Andy and Annette, Walton Gurin. Like we were sort of spent afternoons at their house doing guitar lessons, which were also really songwriting lessons because they were songwriters too. So and a couple of other players, both our mum and dad were high school teachers in a different town off in Shepparton, but they, of course, being music fans, got along best with the cool music teachers of that school. So sometimes those guys would come over and jam, and we'd watch someone, slapping a bass or, singing songs around the fire. So I wouldn't say, as much as it was not a plugged in creative destination hotspot, no. There was enough people out there who were creative and and sparked that in us and encouraged that in us, because I knew a lot of people who were literally told, no effing way, you're not joining a band, I'm not driving you to band practice, like get a real job kind of thing from day one. That's quite common in the country too, really common actually. And we did not have that. We had like support, encouragement, and a whole bunch of musos, small time musos or whatever, but saying to us like, why not? Why not go for it? Like, wouldn't that be crazy if you actually went for it? So I think that's kind of partially why we always did, why we always jumped in the deep end, why we always said yes to the deal. We said, yes, I'll fly to New York City. I'm 13 years old. I'm going to go without my parents. I'm going to do all sorts of crazy shit because why not? People don't get these kind of opportunities. I'd be mad to say no. So yeah, shout out little supportive community.
I mean, speaking of this sort of supportive community, it leads into a nice sort of segue there because, in 2000 we get Reflector. Now, I first remember hearing about the album for the first time because my mother bought a copy. She's sadly long since passed now, but this is her copy. I've still got it and still play it. I also play the 2 CD version as well because I've got that off to the side as well.
Fancy one.
Of course, yeah, got to get them all. But I remember at the time that to me, Killing Heidi weirdly felt dangerous. Like the artwork felt like it was everywhere at school. The kids loved it. They wrote the name on pencil cases. The name felt violent, and I was a little apprehensive that I might be indoctrinated with this band. But my mother started playing it in earnest, and it blew my mind. And the public loved it too. I mean, top of the charts, 4 ARIA awards. Like, did you guys, when you were making this, I mean, obviously you got these sort of humble beginnings, you're already seeing you going to massive heights, but had you expected, further massive heights like this? I mean, surely that must have been unfathomable.
Yeah, it really was. It was for us like we didn't even think it was going to come out. It felt like, oh, we've just created this thing and we're listening to this finished thing going, oh, it sounds like crazy and polished and it sounds, professional and great.
Nobody wants it. Maybe nobody likes it. Maybe it's too crazy. I think we went through a phase of going, oh God, have we cooked it? Have we shat the bed? Is this too crazy? No one's going to put it out.
Yeah, no, we had no idea that it was going to connect in that way. And it really wasn't until, again, Triple J were the only people that picked up Weir, really. So off the back of Kettle, they embraced Weir, and commercial radio said, we're never going to play that. It's too weird. Acoustic verse and then a bombastic chorus. The contrast was too much. And then it was just this weird sort of tipping point where Triple J, it was high rotation. It got us into, alternative media, loving it. And performance opportunities, all the cool festivals that weren't commercial festivals. And then it just reached this tipping point where all of a sudden commercial radio just couldn't deny it, or they changed their mind or whatever it was going to be. And then it was Weir on high rotation on Triple J and every commercial network. And then the management were very strategic. They dropped Mascara as soon as that crossover happened. And then we had 2 massive hit singles on high rotation. And then it was just out of control. It was just crazy. Yeah.
I think too, I think that's like absolutely charting there was some clever release strategy, but the creative part of that question too, like you were saying how it felt dangerous, it felt weird. It was like, oh shit, thank you. I feel really complimented by that because I think
that was the plan, I should say.
to give ourselves a little credit, which has honestly taken me a long time to do. We have good creative instincts. We were called that from day one. No one gave us that name. And I remember Jessie and I sitting at the kitchen table and mum and dad, for example, going, no, that's so violent. Like, no one's going to like that name. We don't like that name. And I remember saying like, you're not our target audience or something like, something very, very, very CUNTY for a little 13-year-old to say. But was she right? She was right. Like it's a damn good name. And we knew that we somehow weirdly grew up in bumfuck nowhere with no one educating us, but like we had a few instincts around marketing and story and contrast and clash, and that it's kind of cool to have a bit of a jarring name, but then have this little girl singing, stuff like that. So I'm kind of proud of those kids who made some edgy creative decisions that ended up opening doors that became a currently lifelong career. So good on those little kids.
So after Reflector, obviously, there are 2 more albums before you guys I say call it quits, but you went on hiatus basically. I think that's I don't actually, is hiatus the correct phrase, or did you guys actually split up, or what's the?
We never cleared that one up ourselves. We just like literally just walked away. It's just, if I could do that, the meme of Homer Simpson going backwards into the hedge. We sort of just walked backwards into the hedge because, to be honest, I personally wanted to break up. I just didn't want to make a big fanfare about it. I was like, I'm done. I'm cooked. I'm completely spent. I need mental health time. I need life living time. We've got some dysfunction in the career and dysfunction in the life, and just absolute exhaustion after nearly 10 years of rock and roll since I was a child. So and I wasn't alone in that. Like I think all of the actual members of the band were like, yeah, now you mention it, we should stop for a bit. But it was very hard to say those words and to bring that up. And I'm not one for big exits or anything like that. So I was just like, how about we just stop? And if they want to call it something, they can. I don't even know who formulated the press release, but it didn't say Killing Heidi quitting, they're falling out, because honestly, none of that was true. We just wanted to effing stop. But so I think they called it a hiatus, and we just really didn't know, and / didn't care. And I didn't feel like I should have to make a statement about that when I don't know myself. Like, why does everything have to be so? You don't form a band officially with a blood pact and like go, right, here we are, like from this very date it's on. Like, things do emerge and dissolve. So call me a hippie, but I was like, why can't we just dissolve for a bit? Why does it all have to be so official?
Well, there go my questions about the blood packs. So,
well, there were plenty of blood packs, but just not about that.
So obviously, after there was like music in the meantime. Like you guys were making music. Ellie started doing some solo stuff, etc. But then we've got Killing Heidi coming back, and I guess to take it to contemporary times as well. This year we've got the 25th anniversary of Reflector, and you guys are hitting the road, playing the album in full. There's a reissue of it all coming. So I guess the pertinent question is why? I mean, obviously, 25 years sounds like a perfect time. I mean, we're just a few weeks past the 25th anniversary date. But I guess why did you decide now's the time to take it on the road, play it in full, etc.?
Well, it's something that we have, believe it or not, I don't think we've ever actually played the album in full. So there's one part of it which is we got asked to do Good Things Festival last year, and part of that offer was to play the album in full, which was, we thought, wow, okay, we haven't done that. That sounds cool. The response to that was wild. So part of it was like that invigoration of, wow, there's a real curiosity there just for that album. Obviously, it's massive, but that was another thing that excited us. We had a few technical issues because it was a festival. We had to drop a few songs each time, so we never got to play the whole thing. So we rehearsed it up. So now it's like, you know what? We spent all that time rehearsing the album in full. Now we're going to play it in a controlled environment where there's no excuses. And then, look, we've been wanting to do something with Universal Music with our back catalogue. We've been talking with them for years about what to do. We had some plans that COVID kind of disrupted. So it just felt like finally getting some clear space for both of those things. A celebration of Reflector. We've got some amazing unheard songs that are going to come out with the album in June. And then we've got Destroy All Lines, who did the Good Things Festival, wanting to do something to celebrate 25 years. So it just felt like a great excuse. I mean, it's just a big party, really, celebrating Reflector. And just the response since we've announced it has just been so lovely, so excited that it reinvigorates me and Ella, to go, yeah, let's just celebrate this. It's not a forever thing too. It's only 5 shows. It's not like we're going out on the road for 3 or 4 months. It feels like a limited time kind of special celebration. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think, the thing with Killing Heidi is you never know when we're going to wrap it back up again. That is, we're sometimes food, as Elmo likes to say, so I'd say get it while it's hot, because both Jessie and I have very full to bursting lives. And rock and roll is a massive part of that at the moment, but it isn't the only thing that we do. So if you love Killing Heidi and you love Reflector, I would jump on this tour, because we may have to be called away to our other lives at any moment.
That is a perfect call to action for getting people to buy tickets, because if anyone's saying
we're Mickey trained,
if anyone's out there saying like, "Oh, I'll catch them on the next tour," don't wait for that. That's what I said with Radiohead, and look at me now.
So, no.
I mean, to be perfectly fair, I was living in Adelaide. I would have had to go to Melbourne. I'm like, oh, I'll catch them on the next tour. Oh well. Look, I guess in the interest of time, we should get down to the portion of the podcast from which its namesake is derived. So, brief explanation. Trusty chord sees me follow the 1, 3, and 5 structure standard chord. Ask about one artist that has impacted you, 3 albums that have been influential, and 5 songs you can turn to. The music nerds love the story behind it. I'm yet to have proof of that, but I'm sure they do. Um,
Didn't actually know that's what you were doing. That's genius.
I know. I'm just flattered by the compliment. Actually, no one said that yet. So, look, first question for you both here. Who is one artist that has inspired you the most, whether it be personally or creatively? And by all means, if at any point you guys need to sort of double up with answers, feel free. I'm totally aware that time can be a cruel mistress.
Well, the one that came to mind was like when I was growing up listening to Jimi Hendrix, and that was just from a like guitar mastery um, perspective, and feeling like hearing someone express themselves through an instrument like that, both from a melodic perspective, but also from a sonic aesthetic perspective. So for me, it was, I think Jimi Hendrix just opening my mind up to music being more than a pop song, which I love pop too, but like just something like almost spiritual kind of expression, if you like. Yeah.
And how about yourself, Ella? Who's the
Oh,
one for
I
you?
get one too. Okay, we don't have to share. Okay, that's great. Because so one artist who changed my
Yeah,
life.
I mean, it tried to change your life. It was influential. The one you sort of think of is like, that's the person in my mind.
Oh God, I'm gonna have to say, I'm gonna have to caveat this with it's one of many because my taste is annoyingly broad. I'm that person, like and for those playing at home, you're in front of a wall of CDs. That's like my mind. I have every day is a new sonic adventure. But there's someone who really inspires me, because again, like they have a love of literature and poetry and have turned that into really gritty Americana, very like strong woman focused vibes, still going strong. And that's Lucinda Williams. Lucinda Williams' songs actually completely creatively reinvents herself every few years, but it's always got grit, it's always got heart, it's quite bracingly real and raw and unapologetic. Lucinda Williams often changes before her fans are ready for her to change, or just all these really cool iconoclast things that I find really inspiring. So the music I adore, I love, I listen to it frequently, but the badassery, that's just so inspiring to me.
Oh, she's an absolute gem. I highly recommend anyone should listen to Car Wheels on a Gravel Road if they have the chance. And everything else, obviously. There is a very rich discography to go into. So our next question here, what are the 3 albums that have impacted you the most? This could be albums you're always throwing on or something integral to musical evolution. And I'm obviously aware this is a bit of a kill your darlings sort of moment. It's very hard to pick.
Well, I feel like we share one of these, I'd say, bro.
Yeah. So I reckon we might divvy these ones up. But for me, Siamese Dream was one of the ones that as a teenager stepping into adolescence, and yeah, it was just so influential for me. And I think it was a time and place thing as much as like I love the album. I know it's not for everybody, and it probably feels dated for some people who weren't at that particular part of their lives at that time. But for me, it took me to a different place, a bit like the Hendrix kind of playing did. This one for me was the songwriting, the production, really, and the overdubs, and just the level of craft in the studio that I was really appreciating, as opposed to what I really love a lot. In contrast, is really authentic sounding, stripped back acoustic authenticity coming through a microphone. I love that too, right? So the other thing that I love acoustic guitars and stuff. But this for me was like the other end of the spectrum of just bombastic, huge studio stuff, but well crafted. So Siamese Dream for me, I still feel like is one of my favorite albums of all time, and something as particularly with the Reflector approach to guitar recording was something I tried to poach as much as I could.
It's definitely a co-share for me, that album, just and the Smashing Pumpkins in general. I think Jesse and I related to on many levels. Like Jess is focused on the sonics, but I also felt really emboldened by how emotional it was and how sort of femme, frankly. And Billy Corgan has always had this wonderful almost like a dandyism to him. And I just was like, hell yeah. Yet he's this huge hulking guy and he's such an insane player. Also, we have to mention the drums. Both Jesse and I spent many long afternoons sitting on the porch or staying up late just going, Jimmy Chamberlain's a freak, like, let's be honest, we were two little probably like country stoners just losing our minds over how good the musicianship in the Pumpkins at that time was.
And it's an amazing album to get stoned to in the country as well. Not that I can speak from experience, but
no, because you're not from Adelaide or anything. You wouldn't have any idea about that. Getting stoned to listening to Smashing Pumpkins, like none of us would.
No.
But yeah, 100% back that call. That was a massive one for me too. Can I take the second one, bro?
Yeah, second and third for you. Go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, again, I've had real trouble choosing, but I think I'd have to. I was going to say it's between No Doubt or Alanis Morissette, but I think I'm going to do Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill, because I thrashed that record, and I was, again, you mentioned earlier, like dangerous. It felt so dangerous. She was some of the lyrics on there, some of the content. And Alanis Morissette, I had no idea who she was, like being this Canadian child star and her backstory or whatever. To me, it was like this cool big girl, because at the time I guess I would have still been pretty darn young, and she would have been maybe seven, I don't know, 7 years older than me or 10 years older than me. So girls get this very special wide-eyed adoration of like cool big girls, and I think she was just the ultimate cool big girl who was coming in with this shit hot record. It felt like every track was a single, so also I had a little bit of a success boner for it. I was like, are they just going to keep releasing, are all of these freaking tracks going to be singles? Yes, they are. Yes, they're all going to be singles, and they're all going to go to number one, and you're not going to get away from this album throughout your whole 5-6 years of high school. And I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, actually, I should actually say, like, again, another perfect album in my mind, and one that I actually always sort of view as weirdly analogous to Killing Heidi as well, just for that sort of, like, I don't even mean that as like a bit of a compliment, but I actually really do say I've always had those sort of in mind, where it's like these albums that feel sort of a jagged, but really sort of like smooth and poppy at the same time. It's
my God. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for making that comparison. We'll use that from now on. Yes, we were inspired.
What would your third be, Ella? Obviously, I'm aware that we are a bit pressed for time, so I don't want to drag it out too long.
That to you, just see if we can team back up on one. What do you think?
No, you go. I've got a couple of songs for the next bit, but
okay. Look, this one's going to hark back to our folk roots, because I still, for me, I don't know. Look, I mean, Bob Dylan. Let's just go for gold. Let's go for God. The saying in our household was Bob is God, and then when Bob did a bad gig, it was God is dead. I think my mum was teasing my dad about Bob being a bit shit live, but anyway, I almost can't choose a Bob Dylan record, but my personal favorite that I still play for, really, really regularly, and for soothing and for those going back to childhood feels, is Another Side of Bob Dylan is just full of wonderful ballads. It has Ballad in Plain D on it, which is my favorite song ever. And I think that's probably influenced me a lot more now in my solo career, like just very intimate and very poetic. And I don't know, people say what you want about Bob Dylan, but it's a very, I think if you don't have a little time with his catalogue, you're really missing out. Like, give it a go. Don't, if you say he can't sing, I highly disagree.
Even his worst songs are better than most artists' best songs. Let's be fair.
I agree. High five.
And how about yourself, Jesse?
I've got songs. Yeah, if you want to move on to songs, you got three.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've got songs. So I've got 2 songs, so you need to prepare 3. Just give you a 10-20-second heads up.
Sure.
So I'm going back to I started with the the current 90s stuff that was current when I was a teenager.
Whoopsie, Freudian slip.
Yeah. Now I'm going back to stuff that I was stuff that was from the parents' record collection, which I still go back to, and it's a bit like what Ella was saying about the comfort of probably the association of the time. But so I've got a song called "May You Never" by John Martin, which is just gorgeous, and I kind of didn't listen to it for a long time, and I've kind of revisited it in the last sort of 5 or 6 years, and there's something nostalgic, authentic. His guitar playing, I've started learning some of his songs. It's like sounds quite complex, but when you actually start to play it, it's a lot more complex than you realize. There's so much. His finger picking technique is very, very advanced, and that's something that I haven't quite appreciated until I've started to tackle some of his songs. So there's an artistic kind of appreciation and the songwriting and the authentic performance. I feel like he was always so out of his mind. It sounds like he's mumbling. His time is all over the place. I've done a bit of deep dive on his biography, but he had a lot of drug and alcohol problems. So I feel like there's a bit of that coming through in his music, tortured kind of artistry going on there, but it's still so beautiful. And then the next one is Eric Clapton, but the Layla acoustic version that he did with Unplugged is a song that I still just love, even though it's a live version and there's beautiful little slips and clangers. There's a couple of missed notes in the solo. I just feel like as far as like capturing a performance, I remember them when that came out, and then MTV Unplugged did some obviously just classic things. But for me, and I love the electric Eric Clapton stuff too, and it's a killer. But for me, that was just another moment of seeing someone do something super authentic and quite intimate. And then to be a live recording, I just feel like it's very special. So those two are for me.
And Ella, how about yourself?
Well, I do also love, like, if you grew up in the 90s with music-loving parents, that Layla, that version is so, every second of it is etched into my brain and into my soul. And we also did busk with that a lot. I reckon that song made us a good $50 every Violet Town market, don't you think, bro? Because we'd whip out the acoustic version of Layla, and all the oldies would be like, how do these kids know about this?
Did you preface every performance by saying, see if you can spot this one? Or?
I probably did. Yeah. See if we can spot this one. Okay, so my final track that I can always turn to, had a few options here, but I definitely use music as therapy. So sometimes it's not even so much about what the song means to me, but it's like what it does to me. Because Jessie, I don't know if people know this, but Jessie and I have been through a very full-on time in the last few years, and throughout COVID, everybody's had a rough time, but we lost both of our parents as well. So our whole story, our whole end of childhood really door very much closed quite brutally on us, and we see everything through the lens of music. Like if I didn't have music to listen to every day, specifically to cry, to heal, to release my anger, to release my shock, I'd be fucked. I can say fucked on a podcast, can't I?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'll give you some of my healing songs. I have a big list, but I think at the moment, actually, if I need to cry and calm, I use PJ Harvey's We Float. And if I need to release my shock and anger and like rah at the world, I listen to Rise by Public Image Limited. And I'd say Rise is my pick of the I'm in a real, I feel like the world's in a real, we need pill right now. We need Public Image Limited energy in this world right now. So chuck on Rise and have a rail and a scream and a anger is an energy. Enough said.
Absolutely. No, those are some brilliant choices, I should say. And look, I suppose I should say, guys, thank you so very much for chatting with me today. And thank you both for being on the Trusty Chords podcast.
Thanks, dude.
Thanks for having us. Nice chat.
Thank you for listening to Trusty Chords. If you listened to this episode and enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you were able to take a few moments to like, follow, share, and review this podcast on your preferred platform of choice. As always, there's no obligation, but I'm forever grateful if you do. And as always, I'm over on Instagram and Facebook at Trusty Chords Podcast, all one word. I've also got a blog on my website, which is tylerjenke.com, that's TYLERJENKE/Trusty Chords Podcast, all one word. That blog features all the details you need to know about this episode, plus a list of all the songs chosen by our guest this week. You can also find a link to the Buy Me a Coffee platform where you can throw me a few dollars to keep this podcast running if you feel so inclined. Lastly, I need to thank Ella and Jessie Hooper for spending time with me for the podcast this week, and also to the ever wonderful Caitlin Crawley of Crowd Favourite for helping to organise the chat too. But once again, thank you kindly for listening, and I hope to see you all again next week as I continue to celebrate music and those that create it.